Okay, we're live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's special LinkedIn Live. I'm Ashley Bernardi, the CEO of NardiMedia, and I'm thrilled to be joined by my dear friend, Dr. Emma Seppala, a psychologist, researcher, and best-selling author who holds dual appointments at Yale and Stanford. You might already know Emma from her first book, The Happiness Track, or from her work with the Yale School of Management and Stanford's Center for Compassion and Altruism Research. But today we're diving into her new book, which I love, Sovereign: Reclaim Your Freedom, Energy, and Power in a Time of Distraction, Uncertainty, and Chaos. It officially releases in paperback this week, tomorrow. So Emma's going to be talking to us about a new concept called psychological sovereignty. And this is so important at a time when the world feels increasingly out of our control. And she's here today to give us tools backed by science to reclaim our calm, courage, and clarity. Oh, let's just take a deep breath in and out for that. Emma, I adore you. I love you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Ashley.
I'm so excited. Okay, so we have a lot to get through in 30 minutes. For those that are joining, if you have questions for Emma, go ahead and drop them in here. I will definitely do my best to get to them. So let's start with the heart of your book, Emma. Tell us what does it mean? What is psychological sovereignty, and what inspired you to write about it?
Well, as a psychologist, there are many terms for many things, but there was no one term that encompassed what I meant by sovereignty. So what do I mean in short? There's only so much we can do about our external environment, about the chaos that's happening outside in the world or generally in our lives. But there is something we can do about our inner state. And so despite the fact that we can't control the external, we can create an internal world that is resilient, that is really strong, and that allows us to show up as our best no matter what is happening. And I feel like right now in these times, that's what we all need. That's what I want children to learn. That's what adults need. So we can not just cope, but be resilient and surf through these times.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to me because these do seem like, from a global chaotic perspective, all the way from what's happening in the world to what's happening in our country, and the struggles that families and people experience individually. How did the past few years of maybe global, but also any personal turmoil, or even in your environment and community, influence your work?
So, I teach executives at the Yale School of Management, and I have the good fortune of seeing cohort after cohort of really talented leaders come through. And it's so interesting to me because oftentimes, despite there being, external situational factors that can impact whether or not you succeed or ascend to greater leadership, there are also ways in which I observe that we stand in our own way without realizing it. And for example, whenever I ask a room of executives that I teach, I ask them, how many of you are self-critical? 90% of the room raises their hand. 90% of the room. Now, if you look at it from a psychological perspective, self-criticism is actually self-loathing. I know that's a really intense term, but it's what it is. And there's this idea, well, if I'm self-critical, that's what leads to self-improvement, right? And actually, that's not the case. When you look at the data, if you are hard on yourself, you're more likely to have anxiety, depression, burnout. You're less resilient in the face of challenges. You're less likely to bounce back from difficulties. And yet, this is sort of what the program that everyone is running. Maybe we learned it from our society, from our culture, whatever. But the fact is, most people do. But every now and then, when I ask this question, there's one, maybe two people who don't raise their hand. And inevitably, they show up as the leaders in the room. They have this internal sovereignty. Now, some people might be thinking, well, self-criticism is important. Like, how do I know, like, what I need to work on, etc.? I'm going to distinguish self-criticism from self-awareness. Self-awareness is, oh, I need help with my statistics, or I need help with my public speaking. I either need to get coaching in that, or I need to have a partner who does that part with me, right? But self-criticism is, what are those words that people say to themselves when they make a mistake or when they do something they regret? It's usually beating themselves up. And so looking at the data, that's one example of how we are taking away our own sovereignty without realizing it, because we don't question something when everybody's doing it. right? When everybody's doing it, it's like, I guess this is just normal. It's not, well, it may be normal in that it may be common, but it's standing in the face of your resilience, and it's standing in the way of you being able to live at your fullest potential. So one thing that I dedicate this book to is waking us up to the ways in which we are standing in our own way and how we can build that resilience from within, that sovereignty.
That's so powerful. And I want to just stay on the example of self-criticism, which equals self-loathing for a minute, because I think a lot of people who are watching can relate. I mean, I can relate. This is, I struggle with this as a CEO, as a mom, as a wife. How can we flip the script from self-criticism to standing back in our sovereignty? So if something happens and you're like, oh my God, I made a horrible mistake. I'm a disorganized person. I can't, right? You just start going down this path. How do we stop ourselves and get back to our sovereignty?
I mean, the first step to sovereignty is self-awareness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So oftentimes we can just be on, autopilot, just going through life, doing the things, thinking the thoughts. And self-awareness, when you cultivate that, you become aware of the programs running your mind, that's when you can say, okay, not today, like, okay, I just made this mistake and I feel a lot of shame or a lot of embarrassment, whatever. Okay, that's what I'm feeling right now. But I'm not going to take it a step further down that negative spiral of self-destruction, of, burning myself into the ground with self-loathing, right? That's not helping anyone, and especially not myself, to get back on my feet and to fix what I've done. And I think one of the examples I think I can most help people is that if this is how you operate, this is what you're teaching your children. This is what you're teaching the young people that you're mentoring, the people around you, if you don't have children, right? So I'll give an example is that I became aware that this program was running through my mind a number of years ago. And I had a 3-year-old and I had a baby. And I was working and I had a situation where I just felt so overwhelmed. And I remember saying something like, I just can't do this. I said something, I'm not good at this, or I can't do this, right? As a baby, 3-year-old crying, and I'm just trying to manage everything. And a couple of weeks later, my 3-year-old was frustrated with something that he wasn't managing to do. And he said the same words to himself. And it's like, well, if that's not a wake-up call, like, you may think, okay, I'm deserving of self-loathing. Maybe somewhere you think that. Well, do you feel that way about your child? Do you feel that way about your colleagues that are learning from you, about the other people to whom you're a role model? And when you think about it, no, like, you don't want that. You want your child to be self-aware. Yeah, maybe, but for sure, like, they should be aware of the things they need to work on, but not the self-loathing, right? That is,
Right.
we talk about, oh, I'm in a toxic relationship, or I have a toxic situation at work, whatever it is that, people are throwing around a lot these days, but nobody stops to ask themselves, wait a sec, am I in a toxic relationship with myself? And if so, how does that make sense? It doesn't make sense. I always quote Maya Angelou, who said, I learned a long time ago that the wisest thing I can do is to be on my own side.
That is right. It's like being your best and greatest cheerleader. And sometimes it also makes me think about, like, would you say that to a friend? Would you say that to a loved one? And the answer is often no. But why are we conditioned to just be critical this way? Or is it our brain trying to protect us?
I mean, it's unclear where this is coming from. Sometimes I think, oh, maybe this is when we were, under the kings and queens and they had to keep us suppressed and we just carried it through, I mean, who knows? And in a sense, it doesn't matter where it came from, but the fact is it's rampant. And I teach executives from all over the world, and it doesn't matter what culture you're from. This is something that's going on for many people. I don't want to say everyone, but for many people. But again, those people that show up the most sovereign in the rooms where I teach are the ones who are like, that's not my problem. That actually is not an issue. And I'm like, I can tell, because you're showing up with so much power, actually. And
Wow.
there's another quote by Audre Lorde, who is self-described gay Black woman in a straight white man's world. She was an activist, a poet, a writer. And she has a beautiful quote. It goes like this: self-care is not self-indulgence. It's an act of political warfare.
Ooh.
Which is really powerful. And in the sense of, it's like this: how are you going to show up on the battlefield of your life?
That's
Are you going
right.
to show up limping because you kicked your way there? Are you
Mm,
showing up in brand spanking new armor because you left your way there? Because you were on your own side, right? It's the only thing that makes sense. So that's what sovereignty is, like waking up to the, oh, wait a sec, like, why have I been doing this always? Why are we doing this? Questioning. I'm always inviting people to question. Even in the executive education classrooms, I'm just like, question the programs that are running in your mind, question the way you are doing things, how you're behaving, how you're relating to other people. Is it serving you? And
mm.
if it's not, reclaim your sovereignty.
Ugh, so powerful. Is it serving you for those that are watching right now? Is it serving you? We have a question from someone, Carlin, my friend Carlin. She said, this topic is so important. Why are we so hard on yourselves? I know you addressed that a little bit. And then a follow-up question, which I think is really interesting. Are men as toxic to themselves as women?
So usually both men and women will raise their hand about being self-critical. But an interesting thing is that we run a class called Reflective Best Self exercise, where you actually ask people to send you feedback, but not critical feedback. It's feedback on when you've shown up as your best self. So that's one of the courses that I teach and that I love teaching. And the difference here is oftentimes women will feel really, really awkward asking for this feedback and even receiving it. They like it, but it can be very moving and emotional and almost feel like it's not okay a little bit. And men don't have that same issue. Like they're okay reading that feedback. So in a sense, they have they're more accepting and willing to take on the positive feedback, which is a strength, you know. And I feel like women need to be more open to that too. Like,
Yeah.
yes, these are your strengths. Take them in, absorb them, digest them, and know them. You know, and
Yeah.
and I think we also there's data on this. You know, so for us all, why is it not okay for us all to really truly know what our strengths are? In fact, one executive that was in my classes, I remember she was one of the ones who said she does not ascribe to being self-critical. And she said, and she really stood out as a leader in the room just through her presence. And she said, I don't work in places where I'm not celebrated.
Wow.
Yeah, that was very powerful and inspiring for everyone.
I don't work in places where I'm not celebrated. I mean, I'm going to remember that one. That's incredible. Okay, I'm super excited about this next question, Emma, and you and I have talked a lot about intuition. You write about intuition, and you even share how in the book in Sovereign how the military is studying it. Why do you think why do we undervalue intuition in our decision making, and how can we strengthen it?
You know, we all have intuition, whether we know it or not. I mean, I start the chapter with a story of one of our mutual friends, Kushal,
Mhm.
who wrote On a Wing and a Prayer. He was in one of the Twin Towers during 9/11,
Yep.
and he had just entered the foyer, and the guards said, everyone stay inside. And I think he was in the second tower, and it had just been hit. And in that moment, the orders were given to stay inside, and something told him to run.
Mm.
And he ran, and he saved his life by a hair,
Mhm.
by a hair.
Mhm.
Intuition, instinct. You know, animals have it. We have it too. For example, if ever you've had a situation where you just don't feel comfortable around someone and you don't know why, you can't explain it. Well, research shows that we are sometimes pick up on physiological cues
Mm.
that we're not aware in our brain. Our brain is so slow compared to our physiology, but we're picking up something. For example, colleagues of mine ran a study where they had two people interact, and one person was hiding their anger. So they were feeling angry and they were suppressing it. And then they were interacting with another person. The other person's heart rate increases. So
Mm.
the other person doesn't know that their colleague is angry, but their
Mhm.
physiology is responding. Their fight or flight is activated. This happens also even in the animal world. Like we know that if you're around a horse and you pretend that you are not scared, or you pretend, or you say a lie, even the horse will be very anxious. That's how it responds. I mean, you could talk to any equine facilitated therapist; they will tell you that, and that's what helps them actually, because once a person can be fully authentic, the horse relaxes. Okay, so it's a physiological response that we have it's a red flag that goes off when something's off. And it's a cognitive function that may not be our rational, logical cognitive function, but it's another form of perception. And a friend, Joseph Michaels, is a neuroscientist, former colleague at Stanford. He did research on decision-making. And he found that when situations are complex, you make a better decision when you go with your gut feeling, as opposed to trying to think it through forever, right? When a situation is, simple to make a decision, like your car's broken, you need to get it fixed or get a new car, that's a simple decision. But a complicated one would be like, okay, like I have a new job in another city. Do I move my family and schools? What about my spouse, et cetera, et cetera? That's a more complex, and that's where you go with your gut. He finds that the decision-making is better. So there's so much research, and the military has indeed been studying this for decades. And in fact, there was a movie that made fun of this called Men Who Stare at Goats. But the fact of the matter is, they've got a new program that's researching this, because so many soldiers came back from Iraq and Afghanistan having shared these stories of how they saved their lives or others' lives by following their gut and going down this road rather than that road, and they couldn't explain it logically. So it's something that the military is wondering, is this a sense that we can cultivate and that we can use for maximum, human performance?
This is so good, Emma. It does make me think like, oh my gosh, for any complex decisions, yes, go with your gut. Why have we suppressed our intuition? Like, why is it not, for me, it's just, why aren't we talking about it more? It should be front and center in our business, our personal, we talk about like, oh, my mom gut, and it's almost like intuition is seen as like a joke, but it should be taken so seriously, and because science backs it up. So why are we suppressing it?
Well, the smartest people in our society don't suppress it. For example, I'll take Albert Einstein, right? He says, the rational mind is a faithful servant, and intuition is a divine gift. We've created a society where we've thrown away the gift and we honor the servant. And he came up with his, genius insights while playing Mozart. He would go and play Mozart, and that puts the brain into an alpha wave mode, which is when we're in that state that's not highly focused, like when you're on your computer, on your phone, or watching something, and it's not so lethargic you're about to pass out. It's that in-between wavelength, alpha waves, which neuroscientists have found that is when we're most likely to come up with our innovative insights, right? So think about it. When do you come up with your best ideas? It's probably not while you're sitting and sweating at your computer, right? When you take a walk.
Never. It's when I'm like meandering around in nature, like not even, listening to music. That's when I get my moments of inspiration.
That's right. It's when actually innovative insights, the brain is in active problem-solving mode when it is in this more relaxed state. And so I think of intuition and innovation, creativity, they're actually very similar, if not the same concept. It's these aha moments of insight. And we have created a society where we are focusing so much on the rational and the logical and being busy, work all the time. Be on your phone from the moment you wake up till the moment you go to sleep. You are actually robbing yourself of your innovative, intuitive potential. And we're doing the same for our kids. When we put them on screens all day, when they're constantly in this go, go, go mode. And so, I often talk to executives who want more innovation in their companies. And I think, well, if you want more innovation, first of all, you don't want a company culture that's extremely stressed out, and you don't want to be working people 70, 80 hours a week. You're actually robbing them of their ability to be more creative.
Wow. Oh, I love hearing this message, because I'm personally very anti-hustle culture, because I believe like we can thrive by getting things done in a restful state. So it's so amazing to hear this. I love the Einstein quote, intuition is a divine gift. And it's like, that's the message we need to be getting out there, Emma. It's just incredible that you're sharing this. Okay. I do want to talk, and this is something else you and I have talked a lot about, breath work. This is a big part of your book. Tell us about how breathing can support us accessing our sovereignty.
Yeah, I mean, I personally came across this as a 23-year-old living in New York City during 9/11. And after that day, I had so much anxiety, my body would shake before I left my studio apartment at 8:30 in the morning every day. And I didn't know how to cope. And I tried a lot of things. And then I walked into this breathing class that I thought, what, that some colleagues had put on at Columbia University. I thought, what is this, And this is just wacky. And I learned a breathing practice called sky breath meditation. It was put on by a nonprofit called Art of Living. And I thought, okay, this isn't going to help me. And then lo and behold, it absolutely helped me regain my sovereignty. I was able to sleep again. I was able to move on and successfully get to grad school, and the rest, is history. I mean, I've been doing it actually for 20 years, but 10 years after that, I'd received my PhD in psychology, and I was doing research on how can we help people have greater well-being, have greater inner calm, more sovereignty, etc. And I ended up working with veterans who had returned from Iraq and Afghanistan with trauma. And many of them had tried pharmaceutical interventions, therapeutic interventions that hadn't worked for them. And so they were part of a study that I ran at the University of Wisconsin. And then we ran a second cohort at Stanford with the Palo Alto VA. And we found that after a week of learning this breathing practice, the same breathing practice, the sky breath meditation, that they were able to go on with their lives. Their anxiety had normalized, and it was still normalized a month and a year later. So we collaborated with a nonprofit called Project Welcome Home Troops that offers this technique at no cost to veterans and military. And there's even a documentary film that was made about this study called Free the Mind that you can watch on YouTube. But it was so amazing to me that you can give people their sovereignty back. And what we believe happens is that, it's very difficult to talk your way out of anxiety or out of trauma. Like whatever, it may have happened 20 years ago and it's still running your life. You can't really talk your way out of it. I remember one of the veterans saying, I know there's no danger in the mall. I'm standing in the middle of Madison, Wisconsin. Like there's no danger, but I have to brace myself for 20 minutes before I can go into the mall. I mean, that's trauma, right? I mean, it may have nothing to do with the present moment, but the past is ruling your present moment. Right. And so what we found was that when they did the breathing practice, they would say, well, I remember everything that happened, but I can move on now. I'm no longer imprisoned by it. So it's a form of sovereignty in a way. And I often tell the story of Jake, who was a veteran who was in Afghanistan, and he drove over an improvised explosive device with his vehicle. And in that moment, we can't even imagine just how traumatic and how shocking, the shock would usually make you fall unconscious pretty fast. But he engaged in a breathing practice. And because he did that, despite severe injuries that would cost him both of his legs, you can imagine that level of pain, right. That despite that, because of the breathing practice, he was able to have this inner sovereignty and ability to think clearly, where he was able to check on the other service members in the vehicle. It gave him the sovereignty to give orders, to call for help. And it gave him that presence of mind to tourniquet his own legs before he lay back and fell unconscious. Later, he was told he would have bled to death had he not done those things. Now, he's alive and well in the US. He has prosthetics on both of his legs, but he's alive because he used his breath in a time of stress. And I feel like we live in a time when, we need things to work well, work fast. And breathing, if you know how to use it properly, is the fastest way to do that. And, if you want just a real quick example, I mean, the sky breath meditation is a protocol I recommend for like conditioning your nervous system day after day for greater calm and sovereignty. But if you want to practice it, you can just pull out of your back pocket if you need it. Like if you're feeling stressed at home, at work, just breathe out for twice as long as you breathe in so keep your eyes closed and breathe out for twice as long as you breathe in. So let's say you breathe in for 4, breathe out for 8, and do that for 5 minutes with your eyes closed. Guaranteed, you're going to tap into your parasympathetic nervous system. Your heart rate will slow down. And it's a great little tool just for for any time.
It's so beautiful, Emma. And I feel like for folks that haven't tried breath work, I mean, you introduced me to Art of Living, and it's a practice I have loved. And it is really life-changing and life-affirming, especially from a calming the nervous system. And I'll never forget, for anyone out there who's like, but I can't even sit still for 30 seconds. That was me. Like that. And I'm sure, Emma, at some point, like in your life when you were doing, it was me. I was like, there's no way because conditioned to just go. And now I find during the day, I take so many breaks just to breathe, just to get back to my breath. There's something so beautiful about it. And so natural. Like we forget to breathe. I sometimes when I'm like working and typing, I find that I'm holding my breath. And I think that that's something that we've been conditioned to do. So I think this is such a great, beautiful reminder to everyone like your breath is it's here, it's free, and it is like a one-way access road to sovereignty.
It is. It is. Yeah, like those veterans, they got sovereignty over their lives. I mean, they were bunkered up in their basement smoking pot and drinking. Their marriages were falling apart. They weren't able to complete school, or they were having issues at work. And it's like all of a sudden they could just get on with their life. That is sovereignty, and we all deserve it. My dream is for everyone and every kid in every school to learn these practices before they graduate. Like, why not,
Yes.
heal their childhood trauma if they have some, like have tools. Right now, there's been so much talk over the last couple of years about mental health at work. Well, it's like, yes, because we don't give tools to kids on campuses. We don't give tools to kids in school. So of course they end up in the workplace. And then there's this crisis in the workplace. So we need to be teaching these tools to people.
That's absolutely right.
Earlier. Yeah.
Yes, I totally, and I would say even like high schoolers and elementary, like if they were taught that from the beginning, breath work and intuition. The next thing I wanted to ask you was also about emotional regulation. We don't learn how to deal with our emotions. Like, no, there's no playbook for how to deal with it. And I'm wondering, respond to stress and negativity. And like, I could even using my example of like my emotional regulation. This is why I wrote my book, Authentic Power, was when I was experiencing grief, all I was bury it. I didn't even regulate it because it was so scary to feel. So what can you say about emotional regulation?
Well, it's really interesting because, no matter how educated someone is, how many MDs and PhDs or, skills they have, or how high of a level they are in an organization, chances are they have as much formal education about what to do with their negative emotions as a 5-year-old, which is none. Actually, 5-year-olds these days probably have more education, right, about it.
Yeah, they're more intuitive.
Yeah, and they get, in schools, there's more of an awareness of that. But here we are navigating our lives, having learned all these things, but not learned the basic skills of how to handle our emotions. So whenever I teach executives this course on emotional intelligence, I ask, so what have you learned? What's like the basic thing you learn to do when you have big, bad, negative emotions? And it doesn't matter where people are from around the world, the answer is always the same: suppress them. And then I always ask, well, okay, so how's that working out for you? And people are like, it's not. And I was actually in a lab that studied this in graduate school, and it was fascinating because research shows when you suppress your emotion, it actually makes the emotion stronger, and your fight or flight response increases. So for example, say anger already runs your nervous system amok, right? But when you're suppressing it, it gets even more intensified. Your heart rate goes up, inflammation goes up, etc. And so the question is, well, what should we do instead, right? I mean, because that's something that having a full-on outburst isn't gonna lead to good results either most of the time, right? So, and that's where two things come into play. I mean, one is this ability to calm yourself down with breath work, like Jake did, so that he could handle his extremely traumatic, scary moment with grace. So how can we do that? And that breathing is really essential. And the other aspect is self-awareness. And self-awareness is that ability to, rather than being swept away by your anger or your fear, being able to take a step back and be able to observe it. Now, how do you get that, right? Because that sounds good in theory, but how do you do that? That is where every cohort I teach, I always recommend a meditation practice. And meditation doesn't have to be something religious or something, whatever. It is a very powerful technique that neuroscience shows increases your ability to regulate your emotions, increases your emotional intelligence, increases your self-control, increases your self-awareness, increases your creativity and innovative potential, of course, because of what we talked about earlier, puts your mind in that meditative space, benefits your relationships, it benefits your immune system. So what I always say is, you know what? It doesn't matter what the science says. You are your scientist in your own lab, which is your own body and mind.
Oof.
So what's the difference between a scientist that does the experiment and that doesn't? Well, the one who does the experiment is going to see whether there's possibility in this. And what I always recommend is take 40 days, because you might be sitting on a gold mine. And don't you want to dig just for 40 days and see? And so I always recommend, use an app. Like my favorite app is Sattva, Sattva. I use it every single day, and it's just plug and play. And when people are like, well, I don't have time, I have 2 kids, I work several jobs, I get up at 5:30, I don't have time. But you know what? It is such an investment, and it makes the rest of the day so much better. I'm so much more self-aware, I'm so much more calm, I'm so much more productive without the stress. And it's a really, really precious tool. And I always think we live in such a fast-paced time. It's extreme in terms of the pace, but also the stimulation we're taking in every day, over 60,000 gigabytes through all of our media, that we have to do something just as extreme to balance it. And sitting and closing your eyes and doing nothing is extreme, but that's how you're going to balance it. And for those people who think, well, I don't have time, I always think, okay, how much time do you spend wasting or doing things that don't really nurture you? Maybe you sit and just like space out in front of a show for like 2 hours at night. Well, can you take 20 minutes and meditate instead? That's what I'm suggesting, because it may just be the key to your sovereignty.
That's right. I love it. And I will say that's my personal healing journey. Meditation was stop for me. And like I said earlier, at first I got through 30 seconds, and now I could go, if I needed or wanted to, I could go for hours. And it does every single time, even though like sometimes you're like, oh, I don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it. Afterwards, I'm always like, oh, I feel so much back in my power. And yes, you can always make time for it. And, scrolling social media, just try with 1 minute. I use Sattva and Insight Timer. They literally have 1 minute meditations on Insight Timer. Like if you're like, I don't know where to start, like go for 1 minute. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And Spotify, like you can get them anywhere, YouTube. And I love that this is such a huge part, and it makes sense of reclaiming your sovereignty. So Emma, you've been so generous with your time. I'm curious, what is your hope for readers to just take away from Sovereign, from your book, not just intellectually, but also emotionally too, after reading it?
Well, I can tell you what people have said. I mean, the other day I saw a former administrator who was at our school before, and I had given her a book as a parting gift. And she walked up to me and she was just beaming. And she was visiting, the area again. And I said, wow, like you look amazing. And she said, I read your book and it changed me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've received a lot of feedback from people they say, I just finished your book, so I'm starting it again.
Yes,
I can't tell you how
that's
many
what
people
I feel with it.
I can't tell you how many people have said that. I don't think I've ever done that. I've never read a book and then started again. And so I know that just reading it is transformative, and it's helping people. And that's been my goal. And that's been something that I kind of knew it was going to happen when I was writing the book, because I could feel it. It almost felt like it was a current coming through me. I don't know if I can take full responsibility for the book, because I feel like I heard it and it was meant to be for these times, and I wrote it down. And so that's my hope. I do believe, even just reading it or listening to it on Audible, I actually recorded it myself the way that I felt the impulse when I was writing it, so I could put the accent on the words exactly like I wanted. So that's my goal. And I do have a course that I am now offering, because there was so much interest in diving deeper. So I actually have one starting in a couple days called The Science of Sovereignty. And people can find out. If you want to find out about it, you can go to iamsov.com, iamsov.com. But yeah, people were asking for more. And so I created this course to just dive deeper, because it's a life-changing topic.
Yes, it certainly is. Okay, so everyone can go to iamsov.com, where you can find where you can get Emma's incredible book. I am reading it again. So this is like, of course, it makes complete sense, because it's just something that you can continue to go back to. The paperback launches tomorrow. It's also available in audiobook, and Emma has a course on the science of sovereignty launching in a couple of days. You said, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. Okay, Emma, this has been incredible. We could go for hours more. But I just want to say thank you so much for your time. I am so grateful to you. And thank you for everyone for watching. Go check out Sovereign. It is life-changing, life-affirming. And I cannot recommend this enough. So thank you, Emma. And thank you everyone for watching today.
Thank you, dear Ashley. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.